Hey guys, Chris here. Tonight we have a story from one of our viewers who lives in Oregon with his family, and he felt that not only they were being stalked by something from the forest in his backyard, but they were under attack. That's next. Okay guys, I am in my studio tonight. I'm going to be doing a trip later this week, and so this is where I'm at for tonight. I kind of miss the old studio here. I've been out in the forest a lot. The mosquitoes have been crazy out there. But it's getting better. And for tonight's beer, we have from the Farmers Brewing Company, Garage Dweller Hazy IPA. Check that out. I don't know if you can see right in the middle. There's like a strange figure in an abandoned barn with the sun going down. I don't know if that's like a Ed Gein character. Ed won't hurt anybody. He's a good old boy. Goes and kills everybody. Crazy. But let's give this a crack here. Oh yeah. And that is a hazy IPA, a little fruitier. Yeah, you can see kind of the almost amber-like. I'm just gonna do a little pour like that. It's not too sudsy. It smells really fresh, kind of a bouquet almost. A little fruity. Wow, almost a malty kind of finish to it. I like that. A little bit of a bitter twinge to it, but it's real pleasant. And it's got, I don't know what the alcohol content is, but it feels relatively strong. It's tasty. Yeah, it's a little bitter. I'm not sure I like the bitter as much on the after, the finish. But that's what we got. Farmers Garage Dweller Hazy. Cheers. Okay, so this story comes to us from one of our viewers. His name is Clark. He sent me an email earlier this year, and he laid out his whole story and the series of events that happened to him and his family while they're living in Oregon. He started out in Missouri, had a business there, he got married, had a daughter, was living his life there. His daughter moved to Oregon with her husband. They had 3 grandkids. Clark and his wife would like to come out and visit and see the grandkids, and they really got to know Oregon. They loved it. It's a really great state. And at some point, he didn't explain when, but his wife passed away. And he thought, at this point, I think I'm going to move to Oregon and be with my daughter, her husband, and my grandkids. So he found some acreage about 20 miles outside of Ashland, Oregon, and that's where his daughter was living. It's a pretty remote area. It's in or near, and I couldn't quite tell exactly because he didn't give me his address, but he's like got an idea where he lives. It's in or near the Cascade-Siskiyou National Monument, which borders Northern California and southwestern Oregon. This monument is located between the Siskiyou Mountains and the Cascade Range, and there's this grasslands and forests there, some really interesting wild country there. So he bought some acreage right near this monument. Good size acreage, a home on it, big deck, forest behind his home, and he just loved it. And so in 2022, just 2 years ago, that summer, he invited his brother Paul and his brother-in-law Glenn to come out and hang out with them. They came out and they brought their wives, and then their wives stayed with Clark's daughter with the grandkids and his son-in-law, and they were up in Ashland, and they had a guy's day with the 3 of them. They were going to go fishing, hiking, right from his property, and just have a really nice time. Now he's got 2 Labradoodles that he kennels up in his backyard, and he's got plenty of room for them to run around, and he had those dogs on that day were up at his daughter's place, so he could just really focus on his brother and his brother-in-law. They were coming back from their hike. And they, like I said, they just left the house, and then they were coming down the road to come back, and they were going to have a barbecue that night. He said marinated some tri-tip, and they were going to have a couple beers and just enjoy the evening. And they're coming down the road, and they're just coming up the driveway, and to the right of the house, you can see part of their deck. And this is late afternoon, early evening, and they all saw at the same time something large, like jump off the back deck and start moving rapidly towards the tree line. Clark said it was massive. They all agreed it was about 7.5 feet tall, had these long swinging arms, and its back was to them like this, and with the head slight turned like that, and it was moving towards the tree line like this. And they're looking at it in amazement, and they can see it's moving quickly towards the tree line. And Clark's brother, Paul, had some binoculars. He holds them up really quickly, focuses in, and he's looking right at it, and he says, "Clark, you're not going to believe this." And Clark says, "What? What is it?" And then right then, his brother Glenn, his brother-in-law Glenn, grabs the binoculars from the brother, pulls them over, and he looks, and he sees what his brother saw, and he goes, "What the hell?" And right at that moment, before they could start dialoguing about what the heck is going on, this thing turned its head, looked back at them while it was still moving, and he said the head was pretty tiny compared to its body. And it let out this god-awful scream, just this hideous scream as it was moving away. Just shocked them. And they're standing there, and the thing disappeared into the trees, and they waited, and they're looking around, trying to figure out what the heck just happened and what they're going to do. They waited. There was some confusion about what they saw. They're trying to talk about it. Clark thought maybe they were exaggerating a little bit, and then they said, "No, you saw it too." And so he was kind of like trying to deal with this reality of possibly a Bigfoot just in his backyard. He'd never experienced anything like that, so he's trying to deal with reality. Just crazy. And they looked around, they waited, and they're like, "All right, well, let's go in." They went into the house, went out the sliding door onto the deck. Nothing was changed, nothing was moved around, nothing was destroyed. But they could smell this horrible stench, this body odor, sewage, really bad smell, just kind of lingering in the air in the backyard there. And they all noticed it. And Clark went to his gun cabinet, got out his shotgun, and he said, "We're just going to have this out here just in case this thing comes back." Still wasn't really sure what he was dealing with. He didn't see it as clearly as Paul and Glenn had. And they're like, "Well, okay, well, let's, have our night, get the grill going and have a couple beers." So they're like, okay, and they got the grill going, got the tri-tip going, enjoyed the dinner, laughing, talking. Occasionally they would look over at the tree line, keep an eye on things, felt comfortable. They had each other, they had a shotgun. He's got the house right there. Like, okay, I don't know what that was. He said it was definitely not a bear. He saw arms on this thing. And it's getting dark, it's getting late, it's about 11:30, and they all go wrap it up for the night, and they go to their own rooms. About 2 a.m., his brother comes storming down the hallway to his room, opens up the door, and he starts yelling. He says, "There's something pounding on the back wall. It's howling, screaming, and yelling." And Clark was getting up. He's trying to get his senses about him. He's like, okay. And he gets up, and they both go down the hallway, opposite direction, the way Paul had come. They go into the living room, and now Glenn is in the middle of the living room with the cabinet door for the gun cabinet open. He's pulling out the shotgun, and then he just turns to Clark, and he's really talking loud. He's like yelling, and he says, "This thing is screaming like a banshee. and he's pointing at the sliding door. And if that is the thing we saw today, that thing could come right through that sliding glass door like nothing. Just kind of this fearful grievance, like, because there's nothing Clark could do about it. It's not like he could fix anything. And so he follows Paul into his room, and he didn't tell me if the window was open or not, but he went to the window and he said he heard these pretty loud whoop sounds, 3 of them, coming from the backyard. And it sounded like they were fading off as it was moving back into the forest, is what it sounded like. And he also heard this howl, the same scream howl all 3 of them had heard earlier. Clark said, let's just be really quiet. Hopefully this thing will just go away. Because he didn't want to go out there in the backyard with a shotgun and take a couple shots into the air and start yelling. He just didn't know what he was dealing with. So he goes, okay, I'll put the back light on. Had a string of backyard patio lights around the patio, and then the floodlight was, maybe that'll deter him as well. That'll help out. Let's just kind of watch things and listen instead of going after this thing. Nothing happened. They waited. They said, all right, they went back to bed. Nothing happened the rest of the night. The next morning, Clark wakes up. It's about 7 a.m. He's going down the hallway, turns into the kitchen, goes over to the coffee maker, grabs a carafe, walks over to the sink. He's ready to fill it up, get some coffee going. He looks out the back window that's just above the sink, and this window looks out into the backyard over the deck. He sees that the Traeger grill is flipped off the deck with the lid open, and it's like upside down. The table is thrown into the yard on its side. The umbrella is broken or bent, and the chairs are knocked down, and one of them's off into the yard. Something came up and tore up his deck furniture. And he's staring at this, and the guys are coming down the hall in the opposite direction. He says, hey guys, did you see this? Did you hear anything? And Paul said, I heard something. I stood up in the bedroom and I listened, but I didn't get up and go out here or into the backyard. So no, I didn't go and figure it out. And Glenn heard something as well. And all 3 of them didn't really want to talk about it. Glenn talked about it to somebody later. Clark didn't want to tell his daughter because he was afraid she wouldn't bring the kids back to his place. And Paul never even talked about it to anybody. Now, fast forward, about 2 months later, that fall, Clark was out of town on a business meeting. He was in Missouri doing some business. He said he had a business there for about 26 years. And he didn't tell me what the business was, but he was on business. And he had his daughter take care of the dogs while he was gone. And so she would come by. I'm not sure what the schedule was, but I'm guessing it was like every other day. Water the dogs, let them out of the kennel, feed them, play with them for a little while. And so she brought the 3 kids, 17-year-old Killian, 12-year-old Aaron, and 5-year-old Liam. Late afternoon, I believe it was September. They pull up, go into the house, go out the back, and Killian goes to the kennel, unclicks the chain, opens the kennel, and normally when the dogs are in there for pretty much any length of time, they go flying out of there like a bat. Like a bat out of hell, just flying out of the kennel and running around the yard doing what dogs do. Killian opens up this kennel door, this gate. The dogs don't budge. They're just sitting there. And he thought, that's odd. He's like, come on, let's go, come on. And they didn't move. And he thought, this is really strange. he grabs one of them by the collar and he starts pulling on him to get him to get up and, come on, let's go to the bathroom, run around, whatever, just do your dog thing. They weren't moving. 5-year-old Liam picked up a stick and he starts tapping on the cage, the kennel, and he's tapping on some plants, just being a little boy, and he's trying to coax the dogs to come out, like, hey, I got a stick, let's play, you know, let's come on out. They weren't moving, they weren't having any of it. Killian knew something was not right. So he starts walking around the backyard just to get a feel for what is going on around here. Dogs are not leaving the kennel, just something is completely off. It's a big backyard, and as he's walking, he notices up ahead an animal, and it's a dead deer, just laying there in the backyard. He gets closer, he examines it, and he notices the abdomen is torn open and the innards are gone. He's going, this is really strange and really creepy. Wow. And he's about to get down on his knee and look further at it, and his mom opens up the sliding glass door and she yells out, Killian, get the kids in now. He doesn't hesitate. He runs over, grabs Liam, and gets his sister and starts running for the back of the house because he had never heard his mom with that sound in her voice. She was scared to death. And they're running towards the back deck to the sliding glass door which he held open, and the dogs who were in the kennel just kind of trying to figure out what the heck they're gonna do, they started running out with them towards the back of the house. And they all came into the back of the house. She slammed the door shut, locked it, pulled the curtain shut. She said, okay kids, I'm gonna need you to be really quiet. It's okay, Mommy's gonna take care of everything. She looks at Killian and she goes, come over here, I'm gonna show you something. She goes to a window, and I don't know which window this was. It was a kitchen or it was a separate bedroom, but they went to a window out facing the back. She said, look, right up there. And they looked up towards the tree line, and Killian could see what his mom saw. It was this large, massive shape standing there in the shadows, and it was standing there still. And she said, when you were running in with the dogs and the kids, this thing let out this growl. I don't know if you heard it. And they all came in, and because of the commotion, I don't know if he heard it or not. She said later that she was too afraid to go out the front and get everyone in the car and drive away because this thing was still there. They said they were watching it from the window, and it would be standing there, then it would slowly move back and disappear into the shadows. It was gone, and a couple minutes later, it would kind of reappear and move forward like it was watching the house. Really scary. So Killian and his mom are watching this thing from this window. This pattern of kind of moving in and out of the shadows, kind of watching the house, kind of stalking things. And then it suddenly starts walking out of the shadows towards the back of the house. Pretty rapidly. It wasn't running, but it was moving very quickly towards the back of the house. Very frightening. And they were losing track of it because it was going past this one window of their line of sight, and they had to move to another window to keep track of it. So they came out, went down the hall, and they thought the living room would be the best view to keep track of this thing. Kids are in one of the bedrooms being quiet, and Killian decides to go towards the window with the vertical blinds and pulls one of the blinds back to take a peek. They called Clark at this point. Clark said, just want to let you know I saw something there a couple of months earlier. Not really sure what it is, but I believe you. And they explained what was going on, and he said, at this point you need to call the police and get the kids out of there. And she was kind of shook her head, and she was like, I don't know what to tell the police. If I explain all this, they're going to think I'm crazy. And so she said, I just want to make sure we're clear, and then we can get out of here. And he didn't want to argue with her. So she waited about 30 minutes to see if this thing was going to come back or see what was going on, because she felt totally vulnerable to bring everyone out to the car while it was lurking in the forest. But after 30 minutes, she got the 2 dogs leashed up, gave the instructions to the kids, and said, okay, you're going to go sit over here, you're going to sit in the passenger side here, they gave instructions to all the kids, and she wanted this to go as cleanly and as quickly as possible. She said, okay, let's go. She opened up the door, kids went out with the dogs, they went in, got into the doors, put the dogs in the back, she jumped in, put it in drive, got out of there. So they made it out of there safely. Clark says he believes the dogs must have seen this deer get killed, and it really spooked the dogs. And who knows what else experience the dogs had being in the kennel overnight, over the weeks and months. Who knows what they really saw. So naturally they were afraid. He said he no longer keeps his dogs in this kennel. It was a good sized kennel. He does not keep them in there anymore. He didn't tell me what he does, if he puts them in the garage or in the house, but they're no longer in this kennel. And you know, if you know better, you do better. When it comes to Sasquatch, you better learn the first time, not after something really bad happens. He says since this time, nothing else has happened. But he did say that at night, not all the time, but just occasionally, late at night, he'll hear a wood knock, or wood knocks, some whoops, these loud whoop, whoop sounds, somewhere deep in the forest. And he didn't explain all this. He just said he still hears sounds. And occasionally he'll even hear a howl coming from his backyard deep in the forest somewhere. So these things are still out there. But this was from Clark, from Oregon, from 2 years ago. So thank you, Clark. Appreciate it. And I appreciate you guys. Thank you for watching. That is our story for tonight. And we'll be on the trail again next week. I've really been liking getting out into the forest and doing these little hikes and doing some exploring and then finding a cool spot to do my stories. It's been a lot of fun for me. I love that. And my ultimate goal would be to have the backpack on and just camp for the night and then have a campfire and do a story and stuff. But it's not always conducive with a full-time job. And so thank you for watching. I appreciate you guys. Keep commenting, keep liking, keep watching. We'll see you in the next one. As always, keep hiking.